All right. Thank you, everyone who's joining us in the room and on LinkedIn for the next conversation in our Sustainability Reimagined series. I am very excited to have Jenner and Isabella from Kind Community here today. If you're only just joining us, we've been talking about the green economy and what the world looks like as we race to net zero. And there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and that alongside just life as usual means that with all the best will and intention in the world, it can be tricky to get into this game, to understand more about it, and to take your place confidently. But the reality is, this is where the world is going, and that's a great thing. I consider net zero and the green economy to be one of the greatest creative challenges that, our generation may well have ever experienced. And there are people who live and breathe this space and have been in it for a really long time that are there to light the way. And that is why I've invited Jenner and Isabella here today because they've been in sustainability and impact and purpose driven business and brands for a long time now. They are at the cusp of this change and they're using their knowledge and their passion and their expertise to help other founders really grow in this space and also connect with like minded people who can support them. So that's what we're going to talk about today is what is sustainability? What is sustainability marketing? Why do we even need to be doing this? What's their journey and how did they come at it? And what advice do they have to give? So, Jenna, Isabella, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to have this conversation. So thank you so much, Leanna.
So, I want to start with Jenna and your dragon slaying because kind is not your first rodeo. And I would imagine you're bringing a lot of your own experience, having as an exited founder building a purpose driven, impact led business out in the open, really. Going on Dragon's Den is not building behind closed doors, is it?
Yes, it's definitely not. I think thickens your skin, certainly, making sure if you're about to stand out in front of not only some proven entrepreneurs, it's also about putting out your business, your baby, in front of millions and millions of people. And it's always early on when you still haven't quite figured out everything, hence the show Dragon's Den rather than fluffy, cuddly playtime den.
Right. And Isabella, how did you get into purpose driven brands and sustainability?
Yeah, it's an interesting journey for me. My background's actually in HR management and talent development. And I worked for a global luxury retail brand, which you wouldn't necessarily relate to sustainability at all. But the business I was working for really wanted to put sustainability at the heart of everything that they did and looking at different models like in the circular economy. And I think there's so many great new innovations now coming out, particularly for fashion in that space. And they were really leading the way, as some of you may know, Selfridges with Project Ocean and Project Earth, and having the opportunity to support the chairman's office in delivering those projects. Being Janner's wife during the pandemic and seeing everything he was doing in the impact space, albeit with the entrepreneurs in the industry and SMEs, I really felt compelled to want to have more of an impact in this space. So that's how I fell into focusing my efforts and my experiences in more of the entrepreneurship world. And yeah, it's just been very exciting and a lot more fast paced than I've ever experienced.
Right. I say startups are not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
You not only do you have to do all of the jobs, you have to be so aware of your own blind spots whilst also innovating. And it sounds like you're both really comfortable in the sustainability space and you're helping people who they know they want to build something with impact and they're going at this maybe alongside their first business. What advice would you give to people who were thinking, what does sustainability matter to me? Is this another hat that I need to be wearing?
That's a good question. I think from the experience that we've had with the people that we've spoken to, it's almost like an innate feeling that it's just the way to move forward. It's no longer looked at. And I think also in corporates as well, it shouldn't be a silo department similar to in the startup world. It shouldn't be thought of as a secondary kind of thought. It really has to work seamlessly with all of the operations and everything that you're implementing within your business. And I think more often than not, that kind of seems to be the case. Everybody wants to do the right thing. In terms of actually how you're tackling it, that can be something separate. But I think the intention to do the right thing is always there.
And I think if you, like, for me, if I flip it the other way and I asked, imagine a world where you can walk the streets and you're safe, you consume food that is locally produced, where it's produced. When you eat it, you feel good, you're energized, you don't feel sick afterwards. The garments that you wear aren't leaking into your skin and causing cancer and every other thing like that. You start to paint or imagine a world that is better for you, better for people and planet and animals, that most people say, yeah, I want that. And then they start to realize, okay, how do we then get there? Sustainability is us trying to create a world where we want to live in that's fairer.
It's so big. That's so big. And I know something that we were talking about at the Climate Collab breakfast was this idea of storytelling. So how does that factor in? How do you move people from this idea of what is to what if, when maybe you're not that confident in your own self, what it all even means?
Yeah, when I was starting out in building Liquid Proof venture, I was trying all of these different marketing tricks and tactics and strategies that I'd picked up on the internet, read books from, and just try to put them out in the world. I wanted to share my great product with the world. I wanted to get as many customers as I possibly could. And after what felt like pushing a really awkward shaped, massive, heavy rock up a hill, I realized that stories, and when I spoke in stories or parables, customers listened. They gave me their time to listen about how my product could help them. I shared stories about other people like them experiencing the product, and they would, in a marketing sense, convert. They would become customers. And for me, telling a story is a way of us connecting with customers, bringing them on a journey, and educating about the wonderful future self that they could become by utilizing the service or product within that. And it's only through my own experiences of trying everything else, did I realize that stories connect with people.
Isabella?
No, I think that was really well said. I don't have too much to add.
And the best stories, right? If we were to break this down, and only now are more and more people in the marketing world realizing that storytelling is a brilliant way of communicating, connecting with others. If we look at the Disney arc, there's always a hero, and the hero goes on a journey. They come up against a hard time or a difficulty. They're met by a guide. A guide gives them the route, or the journey or the solution, and that guides them to success. And that is the story arc. And every single greatest movie ever, every Disney story follows that trend and that story arc. And that's how you communicate. And humans somehow, some way love that basic formula of storytelling. Now, what most brands and most marketers get wrong is that they try to position themselves as the hero in the story, when actually they are the guide. The hero in the story are your customers. And that is really how you go on that journey. And by articulating your imperfections, you relate to the hero in that story even more. And that's why you can overcome telling others you're not supposed to be perfect at sustainability. Sustainability isn't perfect. And by articulating that and being part of that journey with the other people, you're gonna make it collectively together.
And this is where purpose comes in, because I find it so much easier to tell the story around business, entrepreneurship, inspiration space when it's coming from this place of imagine a world where, and you are able to, and together we can. And it's not about the product or the service. It's about that transformation. It's about that empowerment. And I feel like sustainability makes it in my own self feel a lot more authentic. Like I'm not bullshitting because I believe in a more equitable world, because I believe, Janner, to your point, we should have clean air and clean water. It's these things that I fundamentally believe. So I don't feel weird being passionate about it. Whereas if I didn't have that as an anchor, and there was a point in time where I had lost my anchor, I could feel myself falling out of love with the business because I didn't want to bang the drum. I was like, this song's not that good.
Yeah. It's very true. And I think on that point, it's so important to not mislead the customers as well. I think it's really important to remain ambitious and optimistic on your goals as a business and where you want to be and how your customers can join you on that journey. But I think there's very much a fine line in how you're communicating the how you're going to get there, because we all know the why. We know why businesses want to align themselves with sustainability, social causes, and attain net zero. We know why, but how they're going to do it and how transparent they are and how they're getting there, I think it's so important for the customers to understand and also be able to support them in doing so. So I think, yeah, that's a really like something to keep in mind as well.
Coming back to leverage off of that on let's say two storytelling giants, and Marvel and DC. Okay, they're like comic book, great. Marvel was able to like somehow create stronger reach because the people in the story, the hero in each book, used to be a regular person, and then somehow they came interacted with, like they got a snake bit them and they became Spider-Man. Customers connect with people that are like themselves. People like to hang around with people that are like themselves. If you can see yourself in the inspirational story, you're more likely to want to take part, contribute your piece, and be like, yeah, that's like me, I'm ready to go. And your collective force that's much stronger together.
And this brings me to two separate points. So we're going to go one and then the other. So they are actually connected. And it's this idea of greenwashing and influencing, right? I know you guys do a lot on TikTok. It's a space that I cannot, because I just open it and it shouts at me and I'm like, I cannot. I'm a reader. Right? I'm a reader. I just can't handle it. There's this trend of de-influencing, influencers who are building influence by saying we should consume less. And I read the other day that a lot of people are getting their sustainability information from influencers.
Yeah.
Which is great. And then that brings me into this idea. A lot of times influencers, part of the reason why they're influencers is that they're not like us. And then alongside that, where does greenwashing fit into this, right? Because you'll have people for the best intention in the world, they believe in the cause, but they don't have the education or the language to be able to accurately communicate what is going on. And yet they have an audience, they have influence. So pulling all of that together is what this made me think of, that I guess maybe even attention.
I thought on that.
Where do we start on this? So Leanna, can you just clarify the question?
So what I mean is, it's like just this whole idea of, as we're trying to spread the message around sustainability and going after it and putting like the customer at the heart of the story, you've got greenwashing on the one hand. So if you are telling these stories, being as informed as possible. Then at the same time, we're talking about this idea that people like people who are relatable. And yet influencers by the very nature are not necessarily relatable. They've got maybe a more aspirational lifestyle, all of these things. And so when you combine this idea that someone who has an audience and can go out and influence others, where does their, I guess maybe even their own storytelling come into it? I just feel like there is this tension between all of it.
Yeah. I think, okay, first things first, in terms of influencers, what we always encourage for our clients and people in our ecosystem is utilizing your own customers as influencers. So not necessarily having to target people with massive reach necessarily, because we don't want to focus on vanity metrics. We want to focus on the engagement. So if you can utilize your own customers who have bought into your journey and will, because the best marketing really is word of mouth, isn't it? So if you have people who have purchased from you or have used your service to become, in essence, an influencer for your brand, and then that can percolate itself, but also building a community around that. So for us, I guess influencers, yeah, there's definitely a place for them for particular products. I think it all really depends on the business, but we try to focus primarily on utilizing your own customers who know and understand your mission and your values. And that could be in the form of, yeah, again, customers, micro influencers, whatever that may be. In terms of, yeah, de-influencing, I love the trend. I think it's so great. But I think what we need to be really careful of is this whole cancel culture, because startups, you would hope that the intention is to do the right thing, and sustainability is a moving target. We also know that sustainability means different things for different people based on your lived experience, right? We also know that millennials and baby boomers care more about kind of the materials, whereas Gen Z and Gen X are more interested in like the supply chains and things like that. So everybody has different when it comes to what their brands are committed to in terms of sustainability as a whole. Oh, I lost my train of thought there. But
all
I
of
think
this stuff is so connected.
Yeah.
It's almost like a ball of wool.
Yeah, I think, look, de-influencing is great when you're de-influencing a brand that is really inaccurately spreading incorrect information.
Yeah, it can be
right?
de-influenced.
You can de-influence that. When it's a startup that, again, as I mentioned previously, has ambitions to get to net zero, for example, and they're not yet there yet, but they're being de-influenced or they're being canceled because they're not there yet, I think that's not healthy for our ecosystem and the industry as a whole, because you're deterring other founders to want to come into this space from the fear of not getting it right all the time. So I think there's definitely some nuance, and I think we have to have some compassion and support each other in being able to get to where we all need to be.
Yeah, yep. And that's where that green hushing comes in and the green washing. And so I guess I would encourage people to take that step and get as much knowledge as you can from as many places as you can, and really embrace the idea that there is an edge to your knowledge. It's something that Lana Adamson says a lot from Be Better. There is an edge, and part of your own education is knowing where that is, and then being able to find the right information, the right people, and to be able to vet that so that you're building up your own knowledge base. But what you're not doing is stopping because this is as far as I go. I don't know everything, or I can't even get up and jump in to the game. And yeah, go on.
Oh, sorry. Just a really great example just that came up, that popped in my mind. And I'm sure there's other businesses and startups who potentially do this as well. But Ghani, on their website, I'm not sure if they still do it, but a couple of years ago, they had a page on their site that was called The Elephant in the Room. And it was basically calling out all of the things that they have not been able to get right in terms of their strategy, sustainability strategy. So either that was gender pay gap, the materials, how they were sourcing the materials and things like that, but they called it out and they were asking for help in the industry, but also took initiative in saying, look, we're partnering with these suppliers and we're partnering with all these other collaborators. But if there's anybody in our community or anybody who comes across this page who knows what we can do or wants to help out, give us a shout. And I thought that was so brilliant to just be transparent, saying we are so bad at this or we haven't gotten it right. And I think there's some power in that transparency.
Oh, I've got goosebumps. It reminds me of this TikTok that I saw on Twitter around someone talking about how you're not ready to go into therapy until you can answer the question, what was the last argument or conflict that I had where I was in the wrong? And that really sat with me because, Jenner, you made this point earlier. There's something in that openness, that vulnerability, that I don't know what I'm doing. And that is part of that story because everybody loves to help. Mm-hmm. Everybody loves to help. Who does like, I will put something in the suggestion box. Yes, you just need almost permission to do that. So for a big brand to do it, oh, I love that. I'm stealing that, Ghani. Like, I really like that. So if we move into this direction of for marketing professionals and communicators, ultimately that's what you do. That's what you do with Kind. You do it brilliantly, I must say. It feels very authentic and it's unique in the sense that it's community powered. You don't see that a lot. What advice would you have for marketers as they're trying to navigate through this and almost future proof their own agencies and their careers?
The advice I would say is if you feel that you can continue to work in your existing career, in your career, existing path very happily, and not when you're 80, 85, 90, and you look back and go, and your grandchildren are surrounding your bed and they say, why didn't you help us? Why didn't you do anything? And you can quite comfortably feel that you'll be okay with doing that, carry on. If not, if there's that pain of regret that perhaps you had a chance to steer the ship the different way and promote brands and products and services that did good for people and planet, you could play a part in that. I would say it's time to have a think, and we'll be open arms and welcome you to the space. And it all is about changing that thought process. Personally, that was my decision. I couldn't think about the regret that I would have knowing that I could have done something and not doing it. So for me, it's all about helping brands that do good for people and planet and giving them my skills and my experience and knowledge in helping others. It's my contribution. And also, if consumers are changing their buying behavior and opting for more brands that support environmental and social practices, it's only a matter of time until you run out of customers to market to.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, I think it's such a exciting space to be in because we want to make sustainability fun. We want to make it creative. It needs to be. So there's such an opportunity to be able to, really develop this space and what it can mean for these brands to get into the hands of conscious consumers. So it's a really, really fun place to be in.
And there's also this idea of being a beacon, being a lighthouse for others who want to go on the journey. The knowledge gap is huge. When we talk about these green jobs, there's a stat that more than 20% of kids are interested in green jobs, interested in sustainability, but they don't know what that means. And teachers want to connect the dots. They don't know what it means. And it's almost like it's this race to upskill to get everybody to see the world in a very different way, because we know that the future of economics is circular and regenerative. There's only so much natural resource in the ground, right? Only so much the earth can hold. So we have to be able to bring people along the journey, which means we need more people taking the red pill and educating themselves and doing it really quickly so that they can guide others. So if we're thinking of it from that perspective, what really cool kind of innovations and opportunities do you see for professional services who jump in the ring?
Professional services.
Thinking about our creators, communicators, photographers, web designers, there's so much that needs that sustainability lens put on it very quickly.
Yeah, I think that's why we started our community. Really at its core was to be able to ensure that we have an ecosystem of freelancers and founders as well that are aligned with the same values, because I think the way that we work with our clients is we want to ensure that everyone's on the same vision. We all from at our core want to promote products and services that are good for people on the planet, but that needs to extend with the communicators that we're working with, the videographers that we're working with, because it comes from a different lens. They understand the care and the storytelling, as we mentioned, that is required in order to capture the attention of consumers who are now just being bombarded every second of the day with ads, with organic socials about different products all the time. So I think there's a huge opportunity, but there's a lot of effort that needs to go into how do we switch the narrative of purchasing habits. I think it's happening a lot more frequently now and it's becoming second nature. And also to add to that, how do we make it more attainable? How do we make sustainability no longer something that is for the privileged households and something that seems so far out of reach to live a sustainable life, whatever that means for you are? How do we make it so that everybody can have access to live a life that is good for them and their communities. So I think, again, that there's so much opportunity, regardless where you are in the professional services, to be able to jump into this mission.
And just to round that off, isn't that you don't have to change the service that you provide. You're an expert in that space. If you're a photographer, you don't have to learn anything new. You just change who you decide to work with and partner with. If you work with a sustainable brand, work with a brand that is a like vegan alternative, you just carry on doing your skills, what you're great at, but just change who you do it with. And those businesses are more likely to retain your services for longer, and you're going to feel good doing it.
And you change how you do business. Another one of my favorite stats that I roll out is amongst large companies, so with 250 people or more, 78% of them are investing in sustainable marketing. And of that 78%, 20% are increasing the spend. And within that whole kind of majority, they're spending between 40,000 and 400,000 pounds, and they consider it to be a great return on investment. So when we think about GPT-4 and all of these generative AI models, where on the one hand, it almost feels like it's this race to the bottom, the stories that you're able to tell about your own operations, how you do business, that human-centered touch, maybe a slower approach, all of these things are how you rage against the machine, right? It's how you defend, because I genuinely believe creative work will go up in value because of all of this AI. It won't decrease. Stuff is going to be cherished even more than it is now.
Agreed.
Totally. Quick question is, you listen to this right now, watching this, would you rather engage with a photographer that you know about, you've heard their story on the website, it's a video of them, that they've got a little beagle dog, they live in North London and they're vegan and they cycle to all of their photography sets? Or would you engage with an AI bot that would send a camera drone to follow you? I know which one I would go for.
Yeah, in the audience, let us know what you think. We've got a lot of service-based businesses listening in, and that's a very good way of looking at it, because I know I prefer people. You get so much from people that you're just never going to get machine. And even though ChatGPT is sometimes my very best friend and we brainstorm and sometimes we fight, I was like, that is not what I meant.
Yeah.
It's not a person. It is not the conversation that I had when I went to Climate Collab. I didn't come away with that same buzz. I'm not going to get that from a machine. Even from a Zoom, you're not going to get that. And I think that's something that's really important that we remember as we go through is, we got to reimagine how we're doing business. And also, we need to maybe put these stories at the heart of our own narratives and call the machines out a little bit more, be more blunt about it. So I guess the other thing that I'm very curious about with you both is product-based businesses, because we talk about this idea that we live in a full world. Why might you be does the world need your business? Does it need your product? How do you navigate that in the CPG space?
Yeah, I love this question. And I loved how you called this out in our last event. I was like, yes, Leanna, it's so true. I think sometimes we do need to ask ourselves, do we need this product in this space? Because I guess the harm in having pulls of everything again is that we're again promoting overconsumption, albeit even though there may be sustainable products, overconsumption is still, it's not sustainable. So we really need to have a think about, is my product really a solution? That being said, I do think it's important to ask ourselves, okay, there may already be this solution or product in the market. However, we're coming at it with a different angle that can challenge either a competitor or like we like to call them also like collaborator brands, that can push them in thinking different ways of when it comes to the supply chain, when it comes to employing your teams, and really challenge each other on how can we become better together in this market. But on that, it's also looking at, okay, can I partner with the solution that's already out in the market and give them different perspectives? I think you really do need to think about what other ways can you contribute to what's already out there before creating something that's already there?
Yeah. You do need like a minimum amount of competition in the space, in the market. It will drive innovation forward in the right direction. And I forget what it was, but I think it was in Russia. They had state-owned chocolate manufacturers. All of them would just produce the same chocolate. And what happened was a number of the factories realized, we could probably shortcut the ingredients. We won't put the same level of quality in. And there were a number of batches that would go into this central chocolate brand. So the consumer would just buy the same chocolate, and some of them tasted way off than the others, right? And it's because the factories could get away with it. There was no consumer couldn't come back to them and complain and say, hey, your brand wasn't as good. So you need a level of competition to drive quality, innovation, and good practices.
Yeah, it's partly why we can't have monopolies in business, because otherwise it becomes unfair on, I guess, the harder side of it. And if I think about the lighter side of it, it's boring.
Yeah,
it's just boring. When you think even like streaming services, how many people have more than one subscription to a streaming service or whatever it is that floats your boat, gym, all these things, there's room for more than one. Having said that, when we're thinking about bringing our own, like creating our own businesses, we do need to take a cold, hard look at the market and just ask, does the world need my product? And how could I do something differently? Or like you say, get involved in something, another initiative, or like, hey, can I be your co-founder?
Exactly.
Yeah. Starting a business is super tough. It really is. It's a hard grind. It's not easy, and it's not the glitz and glamour that sometimes portrayed, right? So if you're going to set out on that journey, make it a worthwhile one. If you're going to go up against 200,000 of the very similar product and there's not much differentiation between them, that's even a harder journey to take. Whereas if you could put your head up above the parapet and step out way above and beyond the others, you're going to make your life a lot easier.
For sure. If you're watching and you've got any questions, do pop them in the chat. I would love to hear from you. Oh my gosh, you two are both so interesting. And it always brings up like 5 more ideas and questions that I have for you. Like we need like a separate session, almost like a therapy hour. Because I'm like, there's so many questions that I have. Because it's not a linear journey. And it's not something where you can just say, okay, I'm only going to work with sustainable businesses, but I'm not going to look at my own office. It's not a case of saying I'm going to look at my own office, but I'm not going to then change the way that I do business development and put in more effort to find sustainable businesses, because there's just so much that we don't know. And that's probably why it's not surprising that British business banks say more than 50% of businesses aren't doing this because they don't see it as a high priority. They lack the information, they lack language to be able to understand what the conversation even is. They don't know where to go for help. Everything just feels incredibly overwhelming. And you said, if you're not thinking about this, you really need to ask yourself, are you okay with the consequences of not?
Yeah, and I just don't think businesses will last very long if they don't put this as a priority or intertwine these practices within their business some way, somehow. So I think that's something to consider as well. The longevity of your business will depend on aligning what the consumers or your customers want. And we know that this is what they want. So, yeah.
We had the conversation where if you were back in the 90s and you knew the internet was happening, what do you think? This is similar to that. Like climate sustainability, regenerative business practice is how the future should be. So if you're a business owner, if you were about to get a new job in any sort of career and knowing that's the path forward, why would you ignore it?
Exactly. And tomorrow we've actually got Joe Ahern from WPI Economics, and he's going to be sharing some cold, hard facts about this reality. Because, you can almost put the morals aside. This makes business sense, like you just said, right? there's so much venture money going into this space. Banks are changing the way that they're lending because of this space. Insurance companies are changing their requirements because there's trees falling down in California after 15 years of no rain. Industrial farms are underwater today because of massive floods, right? The way that you go about business, it's a whole new consideration, right? There's new blind spots that really can put you at risk. And I don't think that we've ever had that much pressure coming down on us, because it's not just the consumer saying, it's actually Mother Earth. And you can't ignore those signs. You know, it is so real. Oh my gosh, when I think about it. But there's hope, right?
And if you again, if you ask me, do you want to take on Mother Earth, Mother Nature? No. How long has that been around? What's that survived over billions of years? Humans have been here for a speck of time, and we think
the damage we have caused,
the damage we've done, but ultimately the damage that we're doing is just going to come back and eradicate us. We're not going to be here if we don't learn to live with it and restore it and regenerate it. Otherwise, it's just going to lash back. And we're already seeing that in what you say, in the wildfires, the floods, natural disaster. Climate risk is financial risk, is business risk, is humanity's risk. So we need to align, and aligning with it will also pay dividends in the success of that journey that you take, whether it's owning a business, working for a business that decides to adopt some of those practices. So there we go. Obviously, right, you can see we're pretty.
Mitigation.
That's it.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go on. There was a lag.
No, I was just going to say, you can tell we're pretty passionate about this.
As you should be. And I like that you're taking the lead in this space, because you're taking kind of traditional things that we know of, community, marketing, and you're giving it that sustainable edge. And I think by spraying it all over the place so everyone just ingests it, it's going a long way for this whole new normal. So I thank you very much for taking some time out to speak today. Got a bit of the menopause brain happening at the moment. So it's a bit like, oh my gosh, there's holes. But we persist. We actually persist.
Yes.
But yes, where will we find you for anyone who wants to get involved with Kind, who wants you to help them grow their impact-driven business?
Absolutely. So our website is probably the best way to just learn a little bit more about who we are and what services we provide. And that's kind.community. Very simple. So you can find us kind.community. You could apply to join our community as well on our website on the community page. And if you want to meet us in person, we'd love to connect in person as much as we can. So we host monthly climate collab breakfast clubs, which we're going to have to rethink of that name. We keep saying that, but I think it's going to stick eventually, the tongue twister. But we host those every month, the last Tuesday of each month. And during the event, it's hosted at 21 Soho, so central London, quite accessible for those who are in the area. We do 2 fireside chats, one with the founder, one with an impact investor, and some time to just connect and collaborate with each other. So really hope to see everybody if you can attend at our events. If not, send us an email on our website.
Highly recommend. The vibes are very high. Great morning. Thank you both very much. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, just pop them in and we'll come back in at another day or later on today and answer them. And yeah, tomorrow we've got Joe Ahern from WPI Economics coming in to talk to us about green jobs and the cold hard facts around the net zero economy. And I'll be adding in my perspective as to why, if we don't get more diversity at the table, we run the risk of net zero being the greatest rug pull the world has ever seen. So do come and join us. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Leanna. Really enjoyed the conversation.
All right, we will see everybody soon.
Bye for now.
Bye.